everyone, and welcome to Back to the Bench TV. And what an honour we have today. Former St Kilda champion, 287 gamer, multiple All-Australian, and Marston old boy, Leigh Montagna joins the bench. Welcome, Leigh. Glad to have you on, mate.
G'day, boys. Thanks for having me. Certainly Marston old boy. Long time ago, I finished back in 2001, but fond memories of the school. We actually had the first ever AGS Grand Final back in 2000 against Assumption, and we beat them. So I've got some fond memories back at the school.
I hear your brother's coaching at the 19s or something. Is that true?
Yeah, my brother played about 10 years for the Marston Old Boys, and now he's involved in coaching. He was with the senior side doing some assistant coaching. I actually don't know what he's doing. Well, there was no footy this year, but next season, whether he's going to do some 19s or help out with the reserves or seniors, he'll stay involved at the club because we have a really good affinity with the school.
Yeah, awesome. Now, Leigh, playing two grand finals yourself, today's interview will be based around, grand finals, the 2009, 2010 one, and obviously just talk about this year's grand final. But before we get stuck in, I just want to ask, still recently retired, sort of, only 3 years out of the game. I just want to know, how's life been post-footy? What have you been up to these days?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones that I've been able to finish my playing career and go straight into basically the footy media, which, I've always taken interest in. I'm a big fan of all the footy shows and love all that side of it. So I've been lucky enough since I finished to call the footy for Triple M, work on Fox Footy. And I've done a little bit of work the past 2 seasons with the Fremantle Dockers. Basically from Melbourne, I scout the opposition for them. So I watch what the other teams are trying to do and fill in the coaches. So I've been very lucky that I've stayed in football and I don't have to do the hard stuff anymore. I don't have to play and train, but I get to sit back and watch everyone else and critique the game and everyone else's performance.
Awesome. Nice. Love it. Love your work. We will get stuck into your grand final experience though, because we're all about grand final this week. Massive game coming up on the weekend. But having said that, you played in 2 grand finals, or 3, we should say, including the draw. And I don't want to get all doom and gloom, but it was probably both very hard pills to swallow. We can agree on. But I really want to gather your thoughts, Leigh. So the 2009 season, Saints were booming all year, absolute dynamite. I think you won 19 or 20 games for the year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Nearly almost went undefeated at one point. Clear favourite for the flag. Just fell short to the Cats on a wet day at the G. Crap day for footy, but absolutely ripping contest. I think you lost by a goal, if you don't include Max Hook's last goal after the siren. And then we obviously, the famous draw the year after, so close to winning that game, 68 apiece, and then having to back it up the week after, being absolutely mentally and physically exhausted. If you can answer this question, Leigh, which loss was probably more heartbreaking, the 2009 one when you expected to win, or 2010 where you had to do the draw and you had to play all over again?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think for us, the one that we probably kick ourselves a bit more is 2009 in the loss to Geelong. Not so much because we probably the best home and away team that year, because really when you look back now, that Geelong side through 2007, 2008, 9, 10, 11 were unbelievable. And we just came up against a side on the day that were hurting from losing in 2008. Remember, they lost that game to Hawthorn. They should have won. So they had that little bit of sort of extra motivation. And they were a great team. But when you look at that game, even though we didn't capitalise on the scoreboard, I think at one stage we had like 37 inside 50s to 15. We were controlling the game. We were actually playing the much better football. We just couldn't put the scores on the board. We let a team like Geelong still have a chance in that last quarter, and a champion side like the Cats were just too good. So that's probably the one where we probably played the better and didn't quite get the win. 2010 in the draw, Collingwood were the best team all year. They were the favourites going into that game. And while Brendan Goddard put us in front with 5 minutes to go, and that was an awesome game, we probably felt more that the 2009 was the one that hurt us. But in saying that, we don't have any regrets with those teams, because really all you can ask for when you play a game of footy is to play your heart out and play your best. And the way that sport works, someone wins, someone loses. And we can all look each other in the eye and say, we gave it our all. We just got beaten by 2 better teams in really close games. So while we don't have the premiership medallions, we're certainly really proud of our efforts. And unfortunately, that's the beauty of something like Grand Final Day. One team has to win and one team has to lose. And we just came out on the wrong side of both times.
Yeah, you're certainly right, because there's a few heroic efforts. We saw Lenny Hayes goal from outside 50 in 2010. I think he said, I watched that documentary, The Final Straw. I think he said he could barely kick 50 metres for most of his career. And for some reason on the big stage, just found that extra 5 minutes in him. And obviously Brendan Goddard's mark, they'll go down in history as one of the greatest big time marks ever. But you're not wrong in you gave all your effort.
Yeah, I mean, that's what adrenaline does. Lenny Hayes kicked it an extra 2 metres than he's ever kicked it before because, adrenaline that's running through your body in a last quarter of a grand final. And you're right, Goddard's joked about his mark that if we had won the game, he reckons there'd be a statue of that mark at Moorabbin. But unfortunately, it only led to a draw, and it didn't work that way. But, yeah, 2 amazing grand finals. And I'm really, really proud. I mean, I'm going to always remember that draw, and I think everyone will because now it's going to be the last ever drawn grand final. There will never be another draw in a grand final, and that's something we'll be able to look back on. And as some people say to me, to try and make me feel better, not many people can remember who won the 2006 grand final or 2013 or but everyone will remember 2010 draw because it sticks out in so many people's minds. So it's going to be memorable, and even though we don't have the medallions, it's a game that I'll always be proud to be part of.
Of course,
definitely right, mate. I have to agree with you. So the 2009 grand final, consisting of obviously 2 powerhouse teams, St Kilda finishing the season first, 20 wins, 2 losses, and then you got Geelong finishing second, who went 18-4. Also, both sides played in probably the most historic home and away clash, round 14. Yep. Both going in the game undefeated, and then Saints getting the Chockies, winning by 6 points on the back of Gardner's late goal. I just want to know, what was the lead up like going into such a grand final with such a big stage set?
Yeah, the grand final, as I said, the lead up to that was enormous because Geelong had been the best team in the competition for 3 years. You remember they dominated that 2007 season. They should have won 2008. They had a bad loss, and then 2009, as you said, they were still awesome that year. But we were taking it right up to them, and I think we've been told, if you Champion Data have done some stats on the greatest teams since 2000, and they've actually ranked that Geelong 2009 team as the number one ranked team of the last 20 years. And ironically, our 2009 team was ranked as the second best team statistically over the last 20 years, even better than the Hawthorn teams and some of the other teams. So when you look at that, it was just unfortunate for us, as good a team as we were. We just came up against a Geelong side that were awesome, with Bartel and Stevie Johnson and, Gary Ablett and Selwood and all those guns and their back line, with Enright and Milburn and Scarlett. It was just amazing that, there was 2 awesome sides meeting at that one time. And, if we had have probably played any other sides in any other years, we might have won a premiership. But unfortunately, 2009 in particular, we just came up against a better team.
Just adding on to that, Leigh, I think that particular Geelong team you faced on the day had 17 All-Australians who have made it previously. Not that particular 2009 year, but who made it previously. So it goes to show you just a team so stacked full of champions. And, there's no question why they're so successful. They won 3 flags in 5 years. But touching on that grand final again, and in that particular season, obviously, again, we'll touch on the dominant team all year. Ross Lyon, there was a lot of critics saying, I think people saying it was a really slow, boring brand. I'm not sure if that's correct, but it seemed to work. You won nearly every game. Such a good team that year. So many great players. But having lost on the very, very last day of the season, what did a coach like Ross Lyon, who's one of the greatest coaches of all time, although he doesn't have a flag, what does he say to you guys after the game in the change rooms, if you can date back? What does he say?
It's a great question because it's one of the most vivid memories I have of that whole experience. Is a coach like Ross Lyon, who everyone knows, bit of a hard ass, and he was quite tough on us, but he was also, we loved him because he respected us and we respected him. But I'll never forget, mate, we went into the rooms after we just lost. It was just the 22 players and a couple of the coaches and Ross Lyon, and he got up the front and he started speaking about how proud he was of us, how proud he was of our group, how much effort we put in, how hard we tried all year. And he actually started to sort of well up. Like you could see that he was nearly going to sort of start crying when he was speaking to us. And that set off the whole group, mate. And the next minute there was about 15 players in our room, the meeting room. You could hear them sobbing and some tears, and it went really silent. And it was just a really eerie moment where it just sunk in of, what we tried so hard to achieve, and we just fallen short. And when we saw our big coach, who was, really sort of tough and hard on us, to see him start to well up and tell us how proud he was of our group. And then, having teammates either side of me and even myself starting to tear up ourselves, it was, we got 22 grown men that are all pretty big, tough footballers, all getting really emotional. It was, in some ways, it was quite a, I don't know, therapeutic moment. It was quite cathartic. We sort of bonded over it, and we've bonded over it ever since. That we went something, almost quite, traumatic between us, and we've sort of got that bond forever. So it was quite an eerie feeling, yeah.
Was he ever hard on you specifically, Ross Lyon? Because you mentioned he's a bit of a hard nut when it comes to coaching players, and a prime example of that is actually Lachie Neale. He actually pulled out Lachie Neale. He actually said in his grand final speech, Brownlow speech, I should say, and apparently Ross Lyon said something along the lines of, the way you're going, you'll be a back pocket plugger for Glenelg, and you'll play 20, 30 games, and you won't be playing again. And Lachie Neale said that was the message that really was a kick up the bum, and it definitely worked, because look at him now, a Brownlow medalist and absolute superstar of the comp. So was he ever like that to you specifically, or if not you, can you name any other players that he was really hard on and he really made a better player through his hardness?
Yeah, no, I reckon he did it with nearly everyone. Ross had a really good way of just trying to get the best out of everyone by just at the right time, giving them a little prick and a little reminder, or a little bit of a tongue lashing or something like that, just to try and get you out of your slump. And for me, I remember 2008, it was actually the week that Stephen Milne and Nick Del Santo got dropped. And that was probably Ross's biggest decision, was dropping two of our best players because they just weren't doing the team things. And that same week, I was even close to getting dropped as well. We were playing the Sydney Swans, and I was getting tagged by Kieran Jack, and I was having a really bad day. I wasn't getting a kick and wasn't sort of tackling or helping the team defensively. And he moved me to the back pocket in that game after half time. And he said, you're not helping the defenders, so you can go and learn what it's like to play in defence. And because I was getting tagged, my opponent went and stood in the goal square at full forward and didn't move. And I stood at full back for the whole second half and wasn't allowed to move. So it was a bit of a wake-up call. And he just had that ability with everyone. I think, even Rui at times copped a little hit from Ross Lyon. I think the only one that never did was Lenny Hayes. He was probably the only player in our club that never copped the hit up from Ross, because he was his favourite. So that was about the extent of it. But everyone, Goddard, Del Santo, definitely Milne copped a few. BJ Goddard copped a few. All the boys at the right time when they needed it would cop a little spray from Ross.
Awesome.
Now, Leigh, winning the premiership is obviously the grand prize for all players. However, in that 2009 season, that St Kilda team was going for something that I don't think any team has done before, an undefeated season. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, you went 19 in a row on the trot, and then you lost the Bombers by a kick in round 20 after the siren. I just want to know, was it a bit of a kick in the guts not getting that undefeated season, or were you guys just firmly signing a grand final win in a premiership?
It's a good question. I can't really remember. I know that I think Rui missed a goal after the siren. You need to win that game. I think we had a chance to win it. Rui missed after the siren. It certainly wasn't our focus, because a couple of weeks before that, we actually rested about 15 of us players. We were playing against Hawthorn down in Tassie, and I think at that time we were 17 and zip. And Ross Lyon decided to give most of the senior players the week off, just as almost like another bye, because there was no pre-finals bye back in those days. So it wasn't like it was a sort of plan of the club to try and win every game. But we still went down to Tassie, and even with all our reserve side, we still won. It was like Jack Stevens' first game, and David Armitage only played a couple of games. Jaron Geary, there were a few young guys in that side. But no, it wasn't a focus of ours. Our whole mission was to win the grand final, or to make the grand final at that stage. But it was a pretty good effort to get 19 wins in a row, and it was a pretty dominant season.
Yeah. And a real remarkable story here. So you actually played in the 2009 grand final 11 years ago against Geelong players like Harry Taylor, Sarwood, Gary Ablett and Hawkins, who remarkably 11 years later are back on the very same big stage. Not quite the exact same scenario, but still at the final day of the season. What was it like playing against some of these guys? Like, we know Gary Ablett, he was probably the best player in the competition at that time. Just came off a Brownlow medal. Joel Sarwood was Joel Sarwood. Tom Hawkins was fairly young. But what was it like coming against those guys 11 years ago? And what's it like seeing them still going strong 11 years later?
Yeah, look, I mean, at the time, you're just always just challenging yourself against the best. You just see them as the best players in the comp, and you've just got to try and match them. It's, it's always that healthy competition. And and respect for, your rivals. So that was just always, it didn't matter whether it was a Geelong team or the Hawks team when they had Franklin and Roughhead and Lewis or Mitchell. It's always the same. You're just playing against the very best. But now it's more, I look at them with real respect. I love Harry Taylor. I travelled to Ireland with him. Ripping fella. Gary Ablett Jr. is one of the best blokes you'll ever meet. Such a humble guy. Mm-hmm. Tom Hawkins is a ripper. Joel Selwood's a ripper and the most competitive player that I ever played against. So I now just watch like a fan. I just sit back and admire how good those players are. It feels like a different lifetime ago that I used to play against them, to be honest. Now I just sit back and admire their work, and I really hope they do win it. I'd like to see the Cats win. For Gary Ablett, I think he's the greatest player of all time. Mm-hmm. He's a freak, and I just admire the way the Cats have gone about it. I just feel there's a sense of destiny about this season for them. Harry Taylor's last year, Ablett's last year, Selwood, particularly for Dangerfield, been one of the best players in the comp for 10 years, and this is his first crack at it. Hawkins, you'd think probably their last chance, although now they're going to get Jeremy Cameron, they'll probably be at the top end of the ladder again. But I just think there's a sense, it is, but there's a sense of destiny about this Cats team, and you've got to admire their footy club, and I think this is their time.
Yeah.
Great.
Really great.
Now, Leigh, I want to quickly move on to the 2010 grand final the year after. After that 2009 grand final, after such heartbreak, achieving so much that year and just falling short on the very, very last day, back again there on the big stage in 2010, huge arm wrestle, players giving it all until the end. That final siren goes in the 2010 first grand final. I've got two questions here, but I'll go with the first one. How are you feeling at that time, physically and mentally?
Oh, we were knackered. Yeah, absolutely exhausted. We played our hearts out, and to be honest, when the siren went, there was a real hollow, empty feeling. It was a weird situation. We felt nothing. You didn't feel joy. You didn't feel sorrow. You're a little bit confused. I remember almost having a moment thinking, gee, you sort of had to think what was the rules, because you didn't talk about it. It wasn't like we'd said before the game, hey, just in case it's a draw, guys. It wasn't something that was discussed. So there was almost a part of me thinking, oh, are we going to play extra time here? And then you sort of thinking, oh, no, we're going to come back next week. And then we sort of maybe thought they might change the rules on the spot and let us play extra time. Like, it was really weird. It was quite a bizarre feeling. And even the noise around the stadium, it was really eerie.
Yeah. Also, my second part of the question, so a famous documentary called The Final Draw, few of you guys spoke in that. And Mick Moldhouse made some comments in the documentary where he heard St Kilda coach Rossline request to play on the Sunday.
I was probably more confident by Sunday night. Ross was asked a question about the game. He said something along the line, they have every right to put this game on Sunday. When I heard that, I knew they were sore.
I remember the week how sore we were. Like, we hardly moved. And maybe we didn't do enough.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And he said, as soon as I heard that, it clicked with me. St Kilda were just physically and mentally exhausted. I knew they wouldn't have a chance this week. Pretty much summed it up like that. What can you say about this, Leigh?
Yeah, we weren't. No, yeah, we were knackered. We had about 6 or 7 guys that were carrying some injuries, and a couple got injured in that game. Because really, when you think it's the last game that you're going to play for the year, and literally in the grand final, you put it all out there. And we actually did that. To come from 24 points down at half time, we played our guts out. We thought that was our big chance to make amends from 2009. So not only were we physically just exhausted and sore, and we had blokes carrying injuries, also mentally it was really hard for us to get ourselves back up, because we felt that was our chance to beat the favourites, where I think Collingwood had a bit more of a sense of relief, and they were like, oh, gee, we've just dodged a bullet, and they were ready to go again. And we just had too many guys that were injured. Michael Gardner, our dominant ruckman, did his hammy early in that game. I know Cozzy, Sam Fisher, I think Stevie Baker. There were a few others that were all carrying pretty significant injuries. Even during the week training, we had to call back some of our reserves guys who had basically finished for the year to come and train, just so we'd have enough numbers to do some drills, because we had about 10 guys that couldn't really train that week. So unfortunately, we thought it was our last game for the year. We put it all on the line. Blokes played with injury and just unable to get up and sort of be able to replicate that effort the following week.
Yeah. Well, that's really insightful. Thanks for that. I don't actually know that. Pretty crazy stories, but I hate to bring this next one up. I know it's a pretty doom and gloom interview, but sorry about that, Joey. But
that's all right.
I know you probably don't like talking about this one, but this is the big, the famous Stephen Milne bounce, where it bounced away from him and it sailed through the behind posts. I think the scores were 67 to 68. I think you were down by a point. And yeah, if the ball had a bounce to him, he would have easily picked it up, ran through, kicked a goal, would have gone bonkers, given it to the Collingwood fans. Who knows what Milne would have done. And arguably could have won your second premiership for the club. Who knows? Could have gone back to the middle. Pies could have kicked another one. You don't know with footy. Bizarre things have happened in the past. But anyway, I think I remember it quite clearly. I think it was 1-on-1. Stephen Milne was with Ben Johnson in the inside 50. They were vacant, just them two in the goal square. An inside 50 from Lenny Hayes boots it in. Milne beats Ben Johnson to the ball, and he's running onto the ball. All he needs is a clear bounce to kick it, and then everyone knows what happens next. I just want to know, Joey, where were you at that time when that happened, and what was your reaction to it? And then lastly, did Milne feel guilty at that time that he maybe could have done better with that opportunity, or did he feel guilty at the collective that the team missed an opportunity altogether, not just him in that moment?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. First point, I think where I was actually right next to Lenny when he kicked the ball in. I'm pretty sure I was in that passage to play. I might have even shepherded for him when he kicked it in. Ben Johnson slipped over. Milne had the run of the ball. It's one of those ones, it's the biggest misconception that people think that Milne should have been able to stop it or dive on the ball or something like that. I mean, that's just not how you play football. When the ball's in front of you and it's going to bounce, you prop stop, you wait for the ball to bounce and you react to it. Now, I don't think there's been a player in the history of the game, maybe Eddie Betts or a couple of other guys that could read the ball better than Stephen Milne. He was a freak at front and square and picking up the ball. So that's what he'd done 10,000 times, and that's what he'd do another 10,000 times in that situation. It was just unfortunate. It was literally a 1 out of 10 bounce where it bounced at right angles and went sideways. Normally it bounces up in that V, in some area where you can run onto it. This one just bounced on its point, and there's nothing he could have done about it. I know there's an angle that shows from behind Milne that looks like it's closer than it is, but, I mean, you're not going to dive on the ball in the forward pocket because he could have dived and missed it altogether and it might not have even gone through for a point. So you had to prop and stop and wait. He doesn't regret that. I mean, he has sleepless nights thinking, what if and what he could have done, but there was nothing he would have done differently. What's ironic is the one that actually has regrets about that kick was Lenny. Lenny has regrets about the way that he kicked the ball in.
Oh, wow.
And that just shows the mindset of Lenny thinks that maybe if I just had to kick the drop punt, it might have bounced differently because Lenny just threw it on the boot and it sort of was a bit of a floaty ball. So Lenny's the one that actually feels a bit bad about the kick, which is ridiculous because, and exactly. And how do you know the ball was going to bounce like that? So again, that's just part of the uniqueness of our whole, St Kilda's whole story. That bounce of the ball was, 1 in 10. Tom Hawkins hit the post in that in the 2009 grand final, which they brought in the score review system the year after because they didn't want to have a mistake like that happen again in a grand final. So we, a bit unlucky there. And then, of course, a draw, a couple of years later, the AFL changed the rules and say, next time we'll play extra time. And who knows how we would have gone in extra time. So, unfortunately, we had a bit of bad luck on our side in those grand finals, but that's why we love sport. You just, there's no script. There's no, no written ending. It's just the way that it pans out.
Yeah, because watching that documentary, you said, I watched it a few times. You said it's 1 in 1,000 chance that ball would bounce like that in the race with Milne. And also, speaking of the ball bouncing, unluckily, I think it was the fourth quarter where Nick Greenwald's
kick
snapped it,
dribbled, and then all of a sudden it bounced up right near the goal line and allowed Maxwell to get to it. That's another one that was a bit of a fluke. And then even at the start of that grand final, if you remember Dale Thomas's first goal, he tries to kick a torp from 50 metres out, and it dead set floats like all over the place, and it goes through the goals. And that might have been whether that was the draw or the replay, but even it was one of those ones where you just sort of some things just didn't work, didn't go our way.
And Nick Greenwald smother, that just everything wasn't going for you that day.
That was the replay. Yeah.
I also know the second week, obviously have to go back again on the big stage, the same process, the same activities, the grand final parade. I still know what was the lead up going to the second week, and was the hype well and truly sucked out? Was it almost like a week where you just went over and done with, or?
It's a good question. It's harder for me to remember the second week. And to be honest, sometimes the two games get a bit blurred and the 2 weeks get blurred because, as you can imagine, it all ties into one. But I still think we went into that replay still pretty excited. We still thought we were a chance. We didn't know at the time, leading up to the game, that we were going to be as bad as we were. We still thought, even though we were sore and whatever, that we were still a chance, and we still thought we could play well. But now the excitement and all that was still there. It was obviously not the same as the first week. But no, I think it was still pretty normal the week, and still that same excitement and buzz. And if not even more so because of the uniqueness of the situation. There was a lot of talk about it, that, you know, dissecting the game, and, you know, there was a lot of talk about the grand final because we just played it a few days earlier.
Yeah. And last question on that 2010 grand final. I'm sure you're happy we're going to stop talking about it. Saints making an absolute late charge in that last quarter, all guns blazing, just giving everything you got left in the tank. Now, Joey, without being, of course, you know, you'd love to say the Saints, but we're trying to be as unbiased and realistic as possible. Let's say 2 minutes on the clock. Who's winning that game in that draw?
If it went to extra time?
Well, let's just say it was extra 2 minutes in that last quarter, just 2 minutes.
Oh, an extra 2 minutes. Mate, it's, you know what, and I've always said this, and I'm on record. It's unrealistic to answer because, as you just said before, with sport, if the ball goes back to the middle and we play an extra 2 minutes, it's 50-50. You know, who wins the first hit out, who gets the first possession, where the ball goes. It's not. I mean, even people ask if you played extra time, who would win and lose. You can't answer that because, as we know, there's no sliding doors moment. There's no like, if this happens, then the result's different. It's just purely back to, you know, a random game of footy. So I've never thought about if we played extra time, we would have won or they would have won. You can't answer that because, as we know, the way sport is, what happens at the very next contest determines then the flow-on effect. So I don't know. What we do know is we had the momentum in that last quarter. That's you know, fact. We were playing the better footy in that second half and last quarter. But whether that would have necessarily meant that, you know, we would have won in extra time, we don't know, because when Goddard kicked that goal and we had all the momentum, next minute goes back to the centre bounce, Collingwood win the clearance, and they get a goal at the other end. So that's just the way it falls.
Awesome. And just a couple questions. We'll move to the 2020 grand final this year. So who wins this game and by how much? And Norm Smith for you, Joey. Who do you reckon? And
yeah,
why?
To be honest, it is a tough question to ask. I've been on Geelong all year. As I said to you, I feel there's a sense of destiny about this team. Their last crack at it, Dangerfield, he's primed for it. Ablett's last game, the emotion will be there. Hawkins is never going to play better. But Richmond, we know how good they are, and we know what they're going to dish up. Dusty's a superstar. I'm going to lean to Geelong. I think Geelong can win this one on emotion and on effort, win by 7 points, and I just think it's all set up for Paddy Dangerfield. I think this is his moment. He's been waiting for his whole career. He's fit. He's cherry ripe. He's playing this new role as a forward mid. I can see Dangerfield just playing with so much effort and willpower and get his team over the line, and he'll win the Norm Smith, and the Cats will send Gary Ablett out as another premiership player.
Yep. Last two for me, Joey. So for Geelong to win, as you're predicting, what's the key for them to win? And how much of an advantage does Geelong's record at the Gabba have over Richmond?
I think the record helps just with their confidence and their belief that they know they play well there, they feel comfortable there. So that helps. I think for Geelong, it's going to be around the ball. They're so tough around the contest. It hasn't been Richmond's greatest strength all year, although the last 2 or 3 weeks they've been much better in that area. But for Geelong to win, they have to dominate around the ball. Clearances, contested possessions, like, the likes of Parfitt and Selwood and Guthrie and Duncan and Menegola, they just have to get their hands on the footy and get it going Geelong's way. Because if they lose around the ball and Richmond play it in their half, they'll be too good. But if Geelong can dominate around the ball and give Hawkins and Dangerfield and Gary Rowan and Ablett these guys chances, I think that's how the Cats can win.
Yeah. I love it, Joey. I think that's a wrap at the moment.
Yep.
And just last thing, this is completely off topic from all the grand finals, but I just want to end on a funny note because we've had a bit of a gloomy interview about the grand final losses. Now, can you date back to 2013 when St Kilda did a Virgin Australia little dancing, singing commercial?
Yep.
When the Saints go marching in, oh, when the Saints go marching in, oh, how I want to be at St Kilda. When the Saints go marching in, oh, when the Saints go marching in, oh, when the Saints go marching in, oh, how I want to be at St Kilda. When the Saints go marching marching in. Yo, 3 miracles to be a saint. Just walking on water in all it takes. Fishes and loaves can't feed the masses. Get resurrected now, shake your ass. I say shake your ass. I say shake your ass. When the saints go marching in. When the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, how I want to
I want to know, so just two questions. Whose idea was that? And secondly, watching the video, I can't see her anywhere. I'm guessing you were hiding in the back just saying, get me out of here, I don't want to do this.
It was the marketing idea, the marketing team's idea, because there was a prize for the team that did it the best for Virgin. I think you could win tickets or flights or something. And because St Kilda at that stage needed some money, we entered into it. You didn't see me, mate, because I refused to do it. Because when we saw what was happening, I said, this is embarrassing. But this is the problem, right? If you look at it, you wouldn't know any of the faces in it except for one. Nick Rewalt was there. All of us senior players said, there is no way we're going to do that. That's embarrassing.
He would have copped it.
What happened, right? But because none of us did it, the marketing department cracked the sads and they said, well, we need someone. And because Rui was the captain, they put pressure on Rui to do it. And Rui felt bad and said, oh, all right, I'll do it. And he tried to help him out, and he's come out of it looking like an absolute goose. Rui regrets doing the right thing by the club. The rest of us just refused to do it and said, we are not doing that. And I'm glad we didn't, because that vision still gets shown, nearly 10 years later. So poor Rui, he tried to do the right thing, and he got stitched up.
I could watch that video 1,000 times over, and I'll never get bored, Joey. I'll tell you. It's hilarious. Yeah. Rui's absolutely loving it. He's in the middle, dancing, singing.
He just thought if you're going to do it like anything, if you're going to do any sort of acting or do any of those things, you've got to do it properly. Because if you sort of do it half-assed, you look silly. So you've got to try and even when we do TV shows and stuff now, if we're in the media, if they ask you to do something a bit silly, you've got to do it sort of full on to make it sort of funny or the best way you can. If you do it half-assed, it looks pretty crap. So that's what we try to do. But unfortunately, that's always going to be on the internet now, and that's not going anywhere.
Awesome, love it.
Well, no worries.
We could end on a funny note, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, boys.